Hello and welcome once again to Loveland's Talking. My name is Andy Hiller. I'm the Public Information Officer here for the City of Loveland, and we're here today, as we are every month, to share with you, the public, information about what's going on with your local government. Today we're going to be talking about something that we haven't talked about for a while, probably for about 10 years, I would say. We're going to be talking about the upcoming U.S. Census, easy for me to say, census, including some history of the census, why we do it, why it's important, and what it means to Loveland. And with me today are some people who have been very busy preparing for this upcoming effort, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves, starting with Lisa, if you would.
Okay, I'm Lisa Schwartz. I'm the Public Information Specialist for the City of Loveland.
Okay.
And I'm Cecil Gutierrez, the mayor of Loveland.
I think we've seen you on Channel 16 a couple of times.
Once or twice.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm Dixie Schmatz. I am the chairperson of the Loveland Complete Count Committee, which is a group of folks from around town that have gotten together to figure out how we can help Loveland get a really good count on this census that's coming up.
Okay, and Pat, you're a southerner compared to the rest of us, right?
Right. And I live in the southern part of town, and I work for the U.S. Census Bureau, and I'm a state and local government partnership specialist. And I've been with the Census Bureau for 31 years. And
Wow.
About a year ago, I thought it was so important to engage state and local governments in the census process that I've been meeting with mayors, city councils, and other officials and neighborhood organizations all over Denver metro area. Loveland is a wonderful partner of mine, northeastern Colorado and half of Wyoming.
You've been around with this thing. Okay. Well, you've been doing it for 30 plus years. It's been pointed out to me that somebody who's 10 or 12 or somebody, who's young may not have a clue what a census is because they haven't experienced it. People like myself and the other gray-haired fellow over there have been through it a time or two, so we know. Can you tell us a bit of history and what this thing is all about?
Well, let me jump in here just a little
Sure.
bit. It's really a count of all the people who reside in the United States. And so we, of course, are focused on Loveland, and that's why we have the Loveland Complete Count Committee. But the overall census effort is really a count of every person in the country.
And the word complete and everyone should be emphasized
Right,
here, correct?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. Well, why do we do this?
Well, we're mandated by the U.S. Constitution. Article 1 of Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution mandates that we collect a census every 10 years. And all residents must be counted, people of all ages, race and ethnic groups, and both citizens and non-citizens. George Washington was the president when the first census was conducted, and he was mandated that federal marshals go out and collect the census on horseback.
And that was even before your time, wasn't it?
Barely.
My math isn't so good sometimes. All right, okay. All right, so what does the census tell us? What's it all about? Lisa, can you help a little bit here?
Yeah, basically, by doing this complete count, it's the closest we can get to taking a snapshot of our entire nation. It's our best tool for doing that. It tells us who we are right now, where we're going. It enlightens us about our diversity, our educational levels, our economy, so many different things.
Okay, and Pat, you were saying this has been going on back to in George Washington's time. Loveland wasn't around then, at least I don't think so, at least not in its current form. How long has it been done in Loveland or northern Colorado or Colorado in general?
That's probably a question I should know, being a former city planner.
Yeah.
But I'm actually not certain when Loveland first started. I would assume, because it's been going on nationally since not quite forever, but almost, that at whatever point Loveland first became a community, it was counted as a community, and prior to that, people were just counted as folks that lived in the country and not necessarily part of a town. So it would, as long as it's been every 10 years all along. So whoever lived in this region from the very first it was started would have been counted in those census.
We count people in all cities, all counties, in urban areas, in rural areas, in unincorporated areas. So we want to get a good snapshot of everybody that lives in the U.S. Mm-hmm. So we count them where they reside.
Right.
Dixie, I know that 10 years ago, I know it just seems like yesterday.
It does seem like yesterday, it really does.
10 years ago, you were involved in the census effort, and even in rough terms, we know that all of northern Colorado in general, has grown significantly in the past 10 years. The number back then was, what, about 50 grand number of people who lived here?
Yes, actually, I think it came out to 50,600 when the census, 603 or something like that, when that census number came in. And that was an interesting count when we did that, because since we only do it every 10 years, the one before that, we were well below 50,000, 10 years prior to that. And 50,000 is a huge cutoff point for a community getting a lot of extra services and things happening. So that was a particularly important one to the city of Loveland. And it was fun to work on. If we have time, I have some data from that to share.
Oh, that'd be
we'll
neat.
see if we have. I know we only have
That'd
half an hour,
be neat. Yeah.
so.
Well, one thing that comes to mind is I bet the tools are a little different these days, because you didn't have the big internet presence and email and cell phones and all the
Right.
whether it's for the census or just our whole manner of communicating with each other in the world. That sure has changed dramatically in 10 years.
Oh, and that's really true. And back then, the census did not do as much effort, I think, as they're doing this year to get every town to have a complete count committee. But Loveland had one, because we knew that this was going to be really important. And so they suggested it, but this time around, I think they're helping communities do even a little bit more than just suggesting. So we were one of the communities in Colorado that had a complete count committee 10 years ago. And I think it made a big difference in what we were able to really accomplish in getting the accurate forms mailed back in.
And the accuracy and the complete count leads into kind of our next question and next slide, which may be, to most people, kind of the bottom line for them is, why should I spend my time and energy doing this? Why is this important? Because, Cecil, would you share some of the benefits of having a proper count and what this means to the community?
Well, it's very important to the community, and Dixie kind of touched on it a little bit, especially with her background as a city planner. It really helps the city in long-range planning as well as the short-range planning, because there are a lot of federal dollars that are devoted to cities based on our count. And as Dixie said, as you reach certain levels in your counts, why different kinds of benefits come to the community. But it gives us an opportunity to plan for various social programs for seniors and for the elderly. Transportation planning is very important, and we get a lot of community development block grants for our seniors and our affordable housing. It gives our school district an opportunity to plan where to build schools and what kinds of services, lunch programs and breakfast programs for some of our low-income students. Just a wide variety of things that the city receives federal dollars for. And I heard what did I hear somebody quote here? How much money it is per person that
Right. Yes.
it's very important, and I
It
forget
sure
what that
is.
figure is, but it's like
It's about $875 per person per year. Our Colorado State Demographer's Office came up with some numbers based upon allocation of funding from the federal government. Of that $435 billion that goes to state and local governments for funding programs.
$435 billion?
$435 billion
Wow.
per year.
Per year.
So they worked it out per person. For each person
Yeah.
not counted, it's about $875 per person per year. That's almost $9,000 that is lost by a community in funding resources if they're not counted. So it's so important.
And you know, something else that's very important, and especially in a time like now that we're experiencing some economic difficulties and people are being laid off, job training centers. We get funding, federal funding for those job training centers, and it's a great assistance for those people that are looking for jobs right now. So just a multitude of things that we receive funding
So
for.
it's very important everybody gets counted because of all the revenue it generates for the community and all the programs that are funded through through that revenue and the future that evolves from the benefits for all those programs.
And it gives us an opportunity to do a better job of planning our transportation systems and all of our infrastructure systems. It just helps us to know where people are and how many people there are where and how, so that we can move our people around. So.
And there's another benefit, and correct me if I'm wrong, since you are definitely the census expert. It's my impression that this all began not so much because of back in George, you're on a first name basis with him back then, right? Right.
With George.
Back in George's day.
GW.
Yeah, right, there you go. Had to do with our political representation.
Right. After America gained its independence, they needed to know, well, first of all, they needed to pay for the war, and they needed equitable representation among all the states. Then they needed to determine how many representatives there were in Congress. Now we have 435 seats in Congress, so that method is called reapportionment, and we reapportion based upon population those 435 congressional seats in Congress.
Okay, and if the numbers go up, and this is a civics lesson to me, if the numbers go up, does that mean the congressional numbers might go beyond 435, or the 435 will just kind of be spread out a little differently?
No, the 435 will be spread out a little differently. You might all know that last time around, based upon a great population increase in Colorado, we received another congressional seat. That's the 7th congressional district. This time around, our population hasn't spiked so greatly, and we might not, but there are going to be losses and gains throughout the nation.
Absolutely.
So some state lost one when we gained one.
That's absolutely right.
Well, we've been talking about kind of the good news side of this and why it's important, and the benefits that we all receive with a proper count. Seems like in almost everything there are people, unscrupulous people, who want to take advantage of things. You know, when there's a weather event and people come to repair the roof and they take your money and you never see them again, or there are all sorts of scams on the internet, this and that. You can't help but wonder if this might be a, quote, opportunity for folks like that. So what should people know about the census, kind of do's and don'ts, and how they can be confident in the people that they're dealing with and protect themselves? Right.
People really need to know that the census is address related. In Loveland, everybody's going to get a census questionnaire at their home. And we're not going to send anything to people on the internet. And they're going to receive that census questionnaire about mid-March. So if somebody comes to their door, the census is coming in the mail. We don't ask social security number. We don't ask banking or financial information. You know, we want people to know it's safe. We don't ask for a signature. You know, that's important to know.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll come in the mail, not email, but postal
Regular
mail.
Right.
Okay, and you're not going to get telephone calls from somebody soliciting information. Is that correct?
Well, if
Or am I misunderstanding?
you won't get a telephone call.
Okay,
That's
so
correct.
In the mail, and there are some other things that there are agencies and people. This is confidential information that's going out. Can
Right.
somebody explain that and what that means to folks?
Well, confidential means the individual results are sealed for 72 years in Jeffersonville, Indiana. 72 years. We're interested in the statistics to revitalize communities, to make a difference in communities, to reapportion the congressional seats, to redraw the boundaries in the state
Right.
legislative districts. So they go to Jeffersonville, Indiana. They're kept there for 72 years, and you might be interested to know that the 1930 census is the latest available census where you can view individual results, and the 1940 census will be available in the year 2012.
Cecil, you're the mayor. So does this mean
Yes.
that you can't look at my census data even though you're the mayor?
Even though I'm the mayor, I could even be the president of the United States and not see your information.
For real?
For real.
Really?
Absolutely.
That you couldn't see it, or you could be the president?
Well, I could, I don't know that I want to be the president.
Just joking.
I know. But no, whether I'm the mayor or no official can see this. That's the reason this is so safe.
IRS, they can't.
IRS cannot see this. Immigration and Naturalization Services cannot see this. It's very safe. What it simply is a count of people. That's all we're looking for, is that people count.
Okay.
Nothing
Well, we're
more.
looking for the characteristics also.
Oh, that's
There are
true.
just a few characteristics. There are only 10 questions. So.
Well, that brings us into the next slide. Good timing, okay? First of all, not quite the next slide. You're going to get this in the middle of March, as you said, right?
Right.
And the idea is to send it back by April 1st. Am I right?
Right, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, now here's the slide I was looking for. And it's easy because it's kind of a little quickie quiz here. Not a quiz, but a questionnaire.
It's 10 questions. And if you take a look at that census questionnaire, there's a little box there. How many people live in this housing unit? And that's really important that we know. So it's families, it's subfamilies, it's roomers, it's boarders, it's renters. Everybody counts. Everybody counts.
Okay.
And the questions are age and race and ethnic origin, household type and relationship, whether you own or rent your home, your date of birth. That's for genealogy purposes too. That's useful.
And you're aiming at everybody, not specific groups of people or genders or ages.
Everybody
or this,
that
and
lives
the
in a house or lives in non-traditional housing.
Okay. Now, what about people? Well, the obvious one is people who English is not their native or first language. How do I fill out that form if I can't read the darn thing?
Well, I'll jump in here
Please.
on that a little bit. Certain neighborhoods are going to get forms that are actually in both English and Spanish. And the forms are available also in some other languages, and we may have to jump back to Pat on some of those
Okay.
details. But there are other languages available as well. But particularly, I know in our area, Spanish is a big issue for some of the folks, and so those forms are available in both languages.
I
So
see.
people can get those. And there's also going to be help centers. I think we'll talk about those a little bit later on.
Yeah, there's going to be a 1-800 number for people to call if they need to request a questionnaire in another language. And that brings us to what languages is the census questionnaire in. So it's English and Spanish and simplified Chinese and Russian and Korean and Vietnamese. Those are the 6 main languages in the United States, and we are printing questionnaires in all of those languages.
Have you had experience in reading them?
Well, no.
30 years. Come on, recite the Chinese version for us, will you?
Oh, you know, we're going to leave that to our questionnaire assistance centers. And I think Lisa's going to talk about where people can go to get questionnaire assistance.
Well, that's good timing because let's talk about this. Here are a couple of websites people can go to. Is that right, Lisa? If they have questions or
That's
need
right.
some more
It's the
information.
national site, and then our local site here on cityofloveland.org.
And
Some local
on
pages.
our local site, we'll have a page or some pages specific to Loveland. Is that right?
Yes, we do have already, and there's a lot of information on there. And then we will also be listing where the help centers are going to be. That'll go up right away. And just so people know, they're going to be at the library here, just very close.
The city library.
City Library, 300 North Adams. We're going to have another one at the House of Neighborly Service, which is a human service agency. They're at downtown, 565 North Cleveland. And then we're planning to have a Be Counted site. Let me just expand a little bit. Those 2 help sites that I just mentioned, people will be able to go there, and there will be a census worker there working from March 19 to April 19, and they can assist you if you have questions about the census, if you're uncomfortable about something. I believe they're going to be bilingual, Spanish and English, so they can assist people who may have issues with speaking English or literacy issues too.
Yeah.
So they'll be available for that. And then we're also planning to have a Be Counted site at possibly the Boys and Girls Club. That's not established yet, but again, that information will be on our website. And the Boys and Girls Club is located at 2366 East 1st Street.
Okay, so that's the east end of town.
Right, and I wanted to jump in and say that there are going to be language assistance guides in over 59 languages.
Really?
You know, I happen to live in the city of Littleton, And I met with my partners in Littleton, and they said in Littleton schools, they speak, the population in the schools speaks over 50 languages.
Wow.
So we have increasing diversity in our country, and we want there to be an opportunity for everyone to participate in the census.
Okay, and underlining everyone again.
Everyone.
Okay, and that makes me ask, suppose my son or daughter is away at college and not in my household, or maybe even out of state, he or she is going to, I wouldn't name another Mountain West school because go Rams, that's the only one that's important. But anyway, if they're going somewhere else, do you count them, would I count them in my census, or do they get their own out there?
Right. We count people where they live and sleep most of the time. They use the services in the community. They use the roads. They go to school there. They use the businesses, the health services, and all that. Communities need to know how many people live in their community at that time. So everybody that lives in a community, if you're a snowbird, where you live and sleep most of the time. If you live 6 months here, 6 months there, then you choose.
I see.
But the census is tied to your address. So college students should be counted where they go to school.
I got you.
Parents might not like that because they're paying their tuition and all that. But in reality, the services of the community are provided to the students where they live and reside during the course of their time in school.
So they're primary or most long-term resident.
Absolutely.
So if somebody happens to be visiting your house in the middle of March when your form comes and they're going to spend a couple of weeks, that wouldn't count?
No, if they're just vacationing and visiting, they should be counted where they live most of the time. But if for some reason, in our times of economic turn down, there are a lot of families and subfamilies and other people that might be doubled or tripled up in housing units. Mm-hmm. And so that's where we would count them, in the house where they're living at that time.
Okay, okay. All right, now, middle of March, the form comes in the mail. I haven't used this one for a while. My dog ate it, okay? What happens if I don't mail it back in? Am I in trouble? Is Uncle Sam going to come knocking on my door? What happens if I don't follow through
well,
on this?
there are going to be some 1-800 numbers to call for questionnaire assistance, and I suppose you could tell someone that that your census form has been destroyed. But at the questionnaire assistance centers, there are going to be forms at the Be Counted sites also as a last resort. But what we will really do, about the first part of May, if we don't receive that census questionnaire from you, we're going to come knocking on your door.
There will be somebody knocking on my door.
Yeah, up to 6 times.
Really?
Right. And then we're going to ask a neighbor as a last resort, how many people live in that housing unit next door? So we want to make an attempt to count everybody that lives here.
Let's talk about, because we talked about scams and being careful, etc. The person who knocks on my door. How will I know that person is for real?
A census taker is going to have a badge. It's not going to have a photo ID, but then they're also going to have a census bag. Plus, every census taker that we hire, they go through an FBI background check. They're sworn to confidentiality for life. They're fingerprinted. And then if they would release any individual information, they are subject to a $250,000 fine and 5 years in prison or both. Now, the fine used to be $25,000. Now it's $250,000. So we take that confidentiality very seriously.
And I think that they're not expected to go into the house when they knock on the door, am I right? They just stay on the porch and ask the questions?
Yeah.
So they wouldn't necessarily, you wouldn't want to necessarily, you don't need to let them into your home, I guess is the way to put it.
Right, and if a person is concerned about a scam or it not being a census taker, there will be a number for them to call to say, okay, is this a legitimate census employee that has come to my door?
I can give you that number right now. It's 1-800-852-6159.
Again, please, Lisa.
Okay, 1-800-852-6159. That number is also listed in the March City Update, which is our monthly newsletter from the City of Loveland. And yes, no, the census worker will not ask to come into your home, nor should you let them in your home, just like with anyone else. Strangers, don't invite them into your home. It's a common sense thing with the census, just like year-round.
And the person who comes to your door will basically be asking, if I understand correctly, more or less the same 10 questions
That's
that
exactly
are on
right.
there. And they will not be asking questions such as,
Social security number, banking or financial information. They won't ask for a signature on the form. So beware if somebody is asking those questions.
they're basically just counting the people that are there.
And then the resulting demographics, the accurate demographics, then are used by the community to make wise decisions to allocate resources appropriately.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's such an important point. I think, we really want to drive home the point that this is not about you personally. This is about data collection. And so there's nothing to fear. The census is not trying to get into your stuff. It's just simply trying to find out where you are and how many people live in your household, and it benefits us. We get federal funding as a result of that count. So the simplest thing to do is to mail the form back, not even have somebody come to your door. It also costs money for the government to send workers out.
Oh, that's a
and
good point.
we can't afford it right now.
It costs for every 1% of the U.S. population, where we have to go back and knock on the door, it costs about $92 million.
Holy cow.
So we want people, as soon as they get that census questionnaire, fill it out, mail it back. If they don't fill it out by the first part of May, a census worker is going to come knocking on the door. And that follow-up will go on to try to get those responses May through about July.
Okay.
And it's important to fill it out right away and mail it out right away. I know from a personal point of view, if it sits on my desk, probably 20 other pieces of paper are going to clutter over the top of that, and somebody's going to come knocking on my door. So for me, one of the lessons I learned a long time ago, handle paperwork once. As soon as it's in my hand, open it up, fill it out, and put it right back in the mail. And I think that solves a lot of that problem.
It's nice to know our mayor is efficient.
I tried to be.
And it comes with a stamped envelope for returning, too. So you don't have to hunt the stamp and fill in your own
okay.
envelope. All of that should be right with it. You can fill it in, stick it in the envelope, and it is ready to go in the mailbox.
How long should it take me to do
10
this?
questions, 10 minutes. That's the mantra.
Okay.
Right. And the results are going to impact Loveland for over a 10-year period. So
Yeah, it's
you live with those numbers.
And as the slide kind of alludes to here, I heard the phrase that it's kind of like writing a check to yourself or check to your community.
It's like you can participate, you can volunteer to help your community by answering the census. And it's like writing a check back to your community for $875 per year.
Wow.
So
It's like philanthropy. It's a philanthropic act, just filling out that form, 10 minutes. You're really benefiting your community.
And for the people who have concerns about how much the government is spending on things, this is a great way to personally help that out.
Yeah.
There you
I mean,
go.
it does make a difference, you save the cost of having the person that was hired have to come to your house.
Yep.
So I think that's important to remember. And some folks have concerns about their privacy, but filling it in means someone's not coming to your door.
that's
So,
important.
Right.
Very
it's like,
important.
Yeah.
And the other key to it is that some of the, just as an example, the community development block grants that the city gets, that's easy to say.
Right.
But the community development block grants that the city gets, the decisions of how those are spent are done by our citizens here through our commission process.
So that's federal housing money that we get and decide
maybe
what to do with.
it's not just federal housing money, it's it goes to other programs as well.
Okay.
So a multitude of programs, and those decisions, how the spending takes place, happens locally where the best decisions are made.
There you go. There you go.
And you know what? Even the maps that the Census Bureau produces, they're used by emergency responders to plot out their maps. They're used by fire protection districts and police districts to allocate their resources for police officers, firemen. So even city council districts and water districts, they revise their boundaries based upon census results. So a lot goes on with the results.
and it's important to remember too, as we've said all along, you do the census every 10 years. Then the community, Loveland in our case, continues to figure out, okay, based on the last census, here's where we think our population is, here's where we think specific areas where it's grown. Then in 10 years, you do a check. How close are we? And you start again. So it's a baseline that's then used and built on for the next 10 years as far as where you might want to put your fire stations and where you might want your next schools and those kinds of things. So it's really continually important. It's not just important in every 10 years. It's the basis for continuous good numbers.
Right. There's one thing I didn't mention. It's the
Please.
Veterans Administration.
Yeah.
They said that census data, I went onto their website when I was on the data side working for the Census Bureau, and they said census data is one of the most valuable tools that can be used to plan and deliver services to veterans. So that's a huge statement in support of this census.
Okay.
And especially right now, when our vets, our returning vets need assistance.
Right.
Well, Lisa, I will let you introduce the next slide, which you and I both really think is just great for this, about standing up and being counted. You folks here can't see it real clearly, but on the screen you can. You want to reiterate that?
Yeah, please, come mid-March when you get your form. You count whoever you are. If you're human, if you live in Loveland, please fill out your form and mail it back as soon as possible.
Okay, great. We've covered a lot of ground here today, folks. Not literally the census folks, but literally be covering a lot of ground. And anything else that comes to mind you want to mention before we call it a day?
One thing I failed to mention is the Census Bureau doesn't go away. During the decade, we also collect data on surveys, and then the long form replacement is called the American Community Survey, and it's in all counties throughout the U.S. throughout the decade. So you might be so lucky as to get another census questionnaire. The American Community Survey is required by law, or one of our surveys on crime or health or employment or
That means you're
unemployment.
special.
You're special. So, and those census takers that are out there, doing other jobs, will have a photo ID.
Okay.
Good.
So thank you.
Okay. Well, good.
I wanted to add, 10 years ago, Loveland there were only 4 areas in the entire state of Colorado that did a better job of mailing their forms than Loveland did.
Really?
And they were Lone Tree, Foxfield, I don't even know where these places are.
They're only
Eagle,
12 people.
I think I've heard of
Down
Eagle, and Cherry Hills Village, and otherwise we were right at the top of the state in returning. They printed out the percentages, how each community did, and we were very proud of that in Loveland, because that means that we're getting an accurate count at a reasonable cost in a timely manner. And I think Loveland can do it again. I'm thinking we could be top this
There
time.
you go.
Hey.
Number one.
We're number one in a lot of ways.
I think we are.
Absolutely.
Make that happen in this case.
Yeah.
Well, for me,
Yes.
I think I want to reiterate that this is very safe. It's all we're looking for is that data, and nothing more. And so it's a very safe way for us to count, and people can feel real confident that this data is only data and will not be available to anybody else, me or the president, or anyone else.
Okay. Well, good. Well, thank you. Lisa, anything before we go?
I was just going to say, we're anticipating we might be around 67,000 for this census, but there's only one way to know.
There you go.
So-
we ought to have a pool. What do you say?
Yeah.
I'll pick a number and let's see how close we get. Okay? Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, this is going to make my job easy, because I'll tell you what, same time, same date, 2020.
Right.
Right?
Right.
The four of
Same
you,
discussion.
be right here. Okay? Or maybe we could just kind of rerun this. What do you
right,
think?
right.
Things will change, especially all the electronic tools by then. Okay. Well, again, thanks everybody, the 3 Loveland people, and especially our mayor. And Pat, who is a statewide or regional census person, for coming up from the Denver area to do this. It wasn't snowing today. Well, that's good.
No,
Or was
beautiful
it?
weather. No,
Okay, good,
no.
good. Okay, so thank you all for taking part. And especially, folks, thank you for tuning in to Loveland's Talking. I hope you learned a lot about the census, and we look forward to seeing your number among the 67,000 or so that, or more, that this will result in. So once again, thanks for tuning in to Loveland's Talking. See you next month. Bye-bye.